Alex had always been recognized by those around him as someone with immense potential. From a young age, he demonstrated qualities that set him apart: intelligence, creativity, and an eagerness to learn. He excelled in school, consistently achieving top grades and impressing his teachers with his insights and innovative thinking. His friends admired his drive and enthusiasm, often coming to him for advice or seeking his help with their own projects. Despite all of his natural talents, Alex faced a significant internal struggle. He had big dreams of running his own business, traveling the world, and achieving financial independence. But he often found himself stuck in the same patterns, failing to make consistent progress toward these goals. His ambition was clear, but his actions didn't always align with his potential. The trouble lay in his time management, or lack thereof. Alex often found himself caught in the whirlwind of modern distractions. He would spend hours on social media, scrolling endlessly through posts, videos, and memes, convincing himself that he was staying connected or learning something useful. While his intentions were good, after all, he thought he was keeping up with trends or networking in his own way, he didn't realize just how much time he was wasting. The distraction would stretch into hours, pulling him further away from his dreams. His friends and family would often encourage him to take his ambitions more seriously, reminding him of his potential, but Alex would brush it off, thinking that one day, somehow, things would fall into place. After all, he thought he was doing enough by being busy, but the truth was, he was just staying busy with the wrong thing. Alex didn't understand it at the time, but this pattern of wasting time was what was preventing him from tapping into his full potential. He could feel deep down that he was capable of so much more, but without direction and focus, his dreams always seemed just out of reach. This was where his mentor, Mr. Edwards, came in. Mr. Edwards had worked with many young individuals throughout his career and had seen firsthand the incredible potential that was often buried beneath poor time management and misguided priorities. He saw Alex for what he truly was, a person with exceptional skills and an undeniable drive. But he also recognized that Alex was holding himself back, unknowingly sabotaging his own potential. Mr. Edwards believed in Alex's abilities. He could see the future of success that lay ahead of him if he learned to harness his potential and channel it into the right areas. He knew that Alex's creativity, intelligence, and natural problem-solving abilities could propel him to great heights, but only if he stopped wasting his time on things that didn't move him forward. In this expanded version, we can see that Alex's potential was clear to those around him, but his lack of focus and tendency to fall into distractions prevented him from realizing it fully. The mentor's intervention is what brings Alex's untapped potential into sharper focus, encouraging him to recognize his capabilities and make a conscious effort to direct his time and energy toward the things that truly matter. Let me know if you'd like me to elaborate on any other part of the story or add further details. Absolutely. Here's an expanded version of the point Mentor's wake-up call in greater detail. Mentor's wake-up call expanded. For months, Alex had been moving through life with a false sense of productivity. He would wake up every day with the hope that his big dreams would eventually materialize, but somehow nothing ever seemed to move forward in the way he envisioned. He thought that by staying busy, answering emails, chatting with friends, or engaging in online content, he was making progress toward his goals. But the reality was that he was caught in a cycle of unproductive busyness that was taking him further away from his ambitions. Alex had been lucky to have Mr. Edwards as a mentor. Mr. Edwards was an experienced professional in his field, someone who had seen the ups and downs of success, failure, and growth. He had worked with dozens of young people over the years, guiding them toward realizing their potential. But unlike many other mentors, Mr. Edwards didn't just offer generic advice or quick fixes. He challenged his mentees to think critically about their behaviors and to address the root causes of their struggles. And Alex, like many others, had become the focus of Mr. Edwards' sharp eye. One afternoon, after noticing that Alex had been consistently distracted in their recent meetings, Mr. Edwards sent Alex a simple but striking message: stop wasting your time. At first, Alex was taken aback. He was used to hearing advice about working harder, being more focused, and pushing through obstacles, but this felt different. It was as though Mr. Edwards was seeing something deeper, something Alex himself hadn't fully recognized. Alex didn't know how to react. He had always been told that as long as he was busy, he was working toward his goals. Wasn't he doing enough by simply trying? Curious, Alex replied, "What do you mean by that?" The response from Mr. Edwards was swift. "I've been watching you closely. You're capable of so much more, but you're wasting your most precious resource, your time. You're caught up in distractions and trivial tasks. Time is the one thing you can never get back, and you're spending it on things that don't matter." Alex felt defensive at first. He didn't want to admit that his mentor might be right. He didn't want to confront the uncomfortable truth that he hadn't been using his time wisely. But deep down, Alex knew Mr. Edwards had a point. He had seen his mentor's success firsthand, and it was clear that Mr. Edwards' focus, discipline, and strategic use of time were key to his achievements. So, Alex agreed to meet with Mr. Edwards the following day. When they sat down in Mr. Edwards' office, the tone was serious but not judgmental. Mr. Edwards wasted no time in getting to the heart of the matter. "Alex, I've watched you for a while now," Mr. Edwards began. "You've got talent, ambition, and the drive to succeed, but you're not getting closer to your goals because you're misusing your time. You can't just hope your dreams will come true while you waste time on things that don't contribute to your growth." Alex felt a pang of guilt, but also a growing sense of realization. Mr. Edwards was right. He had spent countless hours scrolling through social media, watching videos, and getting lost in conversations that were not helping him build anything meaningful, time that could have been spent on personal growth, skill building, or making strategic moves toward his goals had been squandered on activities that provided instant gratification but no lasting fulfillment. Seeing that Alex was starting to absorb the message, Mr. Edwards pressed on. "Think about how many people have achieved success. They have the same 24 hours in a day as you do. What they've done differently is make conscious choices about how to spend that time. Time can either work for you or against you. Right now, you're letting it slip away." Alex's mind started racing as he thought back to all the moments where he had felt stuck or frustrated with his progress. The reason things weren't moving forward was clear now. He wasn't focused on the right things. Instead of investing his energy in things that mattered, like his career, learning, and growing, he had been distracted by fleeting things that only temporarily entertained or distracted him. Seeing the shift in Alex's demeanor, Mr. Edwards offered him a challenge. "For the next week, I want you to track every moment of your day. Don't skip a thing. Record how you spend every minute. It'll be uncomfortable, but it will open your eyes to how much time you're wasting. At the end of the week, we'll review it together. If you're serious about reaching your potential, you need to start by respecting your time." Alex, though skeptical about whether he could stick to such a task, agreed. He knew that if he wanted to change, he had to start by confronting the reality of how he was living. As he left Mr. Edwards' office that day, Alex couldn't shake the words, "Stop wasting your time," from his mind. It wasn't just a call out, it was a wake-up call. It was an invitation to take control of his future, to stop accepting the status quo, and to make deliberate choices with his time. It marked the beginning of Alex's realization that time was far more valuable than he had ever understood, and how he used it would determine his future success. In this expanded version, the mentor's wake-up call serves as a pivotal moment in Alex's journey. Mr. Edwards doesn't just tell Alex that he's wasting time, he provides him with a concrete challenge to track his time and confront the hard truth about how he's been spending it. The mentor's tough love, directness, and belief in Alex's potential inspire Alex to take immediate action and begin rethinking how he approaches his daily life. Let me know if you'd like me to expand any more points or if you want further elaboration on any part. Certainly. Here's an expanded version of the point, the challenge, in greater detail. The challenge, after Mr. Edwards delivered his wake-up call, Alex felt a rush of emotions, shock, defensiveness, but also a spark of something deeper, realization. He had known for a while that something wasn't right, but he had never been forced to face it so bluntly. The idea that he was wasting time had always hovered in the back of his mind, but hearing it directly from someone he respected made it undeniable. Still, Alex wasn't sure how to start changing. That's when Mr. Edwards laid out the challenge. "For the next week," he began, "I want you to track every minute of your day. Be honest about it. Don't leave anything out. Write down every task, every break, every moment you spend on something, no matter how small. At the end of the week, we'll sit down and go through it together." Alex was initially taken aback. The challenge felt daunting. How could he possibly track every minute of his day? His routine, while not particularly structured, felt busy enough. Could this really reveal something useful? He wasn't sure, but he knew one thing. Mr. Edwards was not someone to make idle suggestions. There was a reason he was giving him this challenge, and Alex didn't want to let him down. With a sense of apprehension, Alex agreed. "I'll do it," he said, feeling a mix of reluctance and determination. As he left Mr. Edwards' office that afternoon, Alex felt a sense of urgency start to settle in. It wasn't just about tracking his time, it was about confronting the way he had been living. For weeks, months even, he had gone through his daily routine almost mindlessly. He woke up, checked his phone, spent hours on social media, responding to emails that didn't really move him forward. And filled his evenings with Netflix shows and random conversations. He knew deep down that if he was going to transform his life, he had to be radically honest with himself about how he spent his time. The next morning, Alex began the challenge. He got a notebook and set out to track every activity meticulously. At first, it felt strange. He'd always considered himself someone who did things, but now he had to document everything. From the time he spent checking his email in the morning to the brief moments he spent scrolling through Instagram or chatting with friends about nothing in particular, everything had to be logged. As the days went on, Alex found himself growing increasingly aware of how much time he was wasting. In fact, it wasn't just a small amount, it was substantial. For example, he noted that he spent about 2 hours every morning scrolling through social media. Initially, he told himself that he was just keeping up with current events or that he was building his network. But when he looked at the bigger picture, it became clear these hours weren't helping him with his goals. They weren't bringing him closer to his dreams. They were simply filling a void of boredom or momentary distraction. Throughout the day, he recorded other time wasters as well. He'd often get lost in short YouTube videos, watching one after another, each one unrelated to his goals. When he wasn't doing that, he found himself procrastinating on work tasks, checking his phone for messages or getting sidetracked with mindless chatter during video calls. By the end of each day, Alex would sit down to log his activities, and the list seemed endless. So many moments, so many hours spent on things that, in the grand scheme of his goals, didn't matter. But it wasn't all eye-opening realizations. As he began tracking his time more seriously, Alex also noted the positive activities he engaged in, like reading a book for 30 minutes, learning a new skill for an online course, or drafting ideas for a business he had been dreaming about. However, these moments of productive focus felt like tiny drops in an ocean of wasted time. The contrast between the time he spent on things that brought him closer to his goals and the time spent on distractions was staggering. By the 4th day of the challenge, Alex was feeling frustrated. The truth of how he had been mismanaging his time hit him hard. But as uncomfortable as it was, there was a strange sense of empowerment as well. For the first time in a long while, he was actually aware of his habits and choices. He could see where he had gone wrong and perhaps where he could make things right. As the week went on, Alex started to shift his behavior even before the final meeting with Mr. Edwards. He began limiting the time he spent on social media, deciding to check it only once in the morning and once in the evening. He started setting aside dedicated hours to focus on his projects and self-improvement, like reading, learning, and creating content. The more he adhered to this new approach, the more he realized that time wasn't an enemy. It was simply a resource that he needed to respect and use deliberately. The last day of the challenge finally arrived, and Alex was both relieved and apprehensive. He had a full week of data. His time tracker was filled with hours of honesty, both painful and enlightening. He arrived at Mr. Edwards' office and laid the journal down on the table. The weight of it wasn't just in the pages. It was in the truth it represented. Mr. Edwards glanced over the entries, and without a word, he pushed the notebook aside and looked directly at Alex. There was no judgment in his eyes, just a calm, steady confidence that Alex knew meant something important. "I can see it, Alex," Mr. Edwards said, leaning back in his chair. "You've been wasting time, but now you've gained something invaluable: awareness. You can't change what you don't recognize. Now that you know how you've been using your time, it's up to you to decide how you want to use it going forward." Alex felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The challenge wasn't just about tracking his time. It was about taking responsibility for his actions and making a commitment to be intentional with every moment. Mr. Edwards wasn't angry with him for the time he had wasted. Instead, he had guided Alex to the realization that change was only possible when he took ownership of how he used his time. In this expanded version, the challenge serves as a transformative experience for Alex. It's not just an exercise in tracking time, it's an exercise in self-awareness and accountability. Through the challenge, Alex begins to recognize the vast difference between what he thought he was doing and what he was actually doing. The discomfort of tracking his time becomes the first step toward real change, and the challenge acts as a catalyst for him to take control of his life. Let me know if you'd like me to expand any other part of the story or go deeper into another point. Certainly. He's an expanded version of the point, the realization, in greater detail. The realization, the week of tracking his time had been one of the most eye-opening experiences of Alex's life. He had entered the challenge with a sense of uncertainty, unsure of what to expect, but now, as he sat with his notebook spread out in front of him, the truth was undeniable. He could no longer ignore the glaring discrepancies between how he thought he was spending his time and how he actually was. Alex had spent the past 7 days carefully recording every moment, from the minute he woke up to the moment he went to sleep. And as he reviewed the pages, the realization hit him like a heavy wave. The amount of time he had wasted on inconsequential activities was staggering. It was easy to make excuses for his habits. He told himself that social media kept him in the loop, or that mindlessly scrolling through YouTube was a way to unwind after a long day. But seeing it all written down, side by side with the tasks he should have been focusing on, painted a stark picture of how little progress he had made toward his dreams. For instance, he had spent an average of 2 to 3 hours a day on social media, hours he thought were just a few minutes here and there, but when added up over the course of a week, it amounted to almost an entire day of wasted time. It wasn't just social media. He also realized he had routinely filled his evenings watching shows, going down rabbit holes of TV series, or mindlessly binging content. Again, what seemed like harmless entertainment at the time had taken up valuable hours. Hours that could have been used to read, study, work on his side projects, or plan his future. When Alex compared this to the minimal time he had dedicated to the things that really mattered, his goals, his business ideas, self-improvement, it became painfully clear he had been so distracted by these small momentary pleasures that he had lost sight of his larger ambitions. The amount of time he had spent procrastinating, avoiding discomfort, and seeking instant gratification was staggering. And as he reflected on it, he couldn't help but feel a sense of deep regret. But beyond the guilt, Alex also felt something else, a burning sense of realization. This wasn't just about wasted time, it was about wasted potential. The time he had squandered was precious, and the opportunities it represented had slipped away in the blink of an eye. Alex thought of his goals, his business, his dreams of financial independence, his desire to create something meaningful. All of those things were within his reach, but only if he started using his time wisely. He could no longer afford to let distractions steal his future. The more Alex thought about it, the more he realized the power he had been giving to distractions. The truth was, these distractions weren't just fleeting moments. They were choices. Every time he decided to scroll through social media or binge watch a show, he was making a choice to give away hours that could have been used to build his future. And the hardest part of it all, he'd been making these choices unconsciously, almost like a reflex, without considering the long-term consequences. He remembered the advice Mr. Edwards had given him when they first met. Time is your most precious resource. If you want to achieve your dreams, you need to respect it. That statement rang louder than ever now. Alex had always thought he was working toward his goals simply by being busy, but he hadn't truly respected his time. He had let it slip through his fingers, thinking there would always be more of it tomorrow. Now he realized that every day that passed without focused action was one more day lost, one more opportunity gone. The realization wasn't just about the wasted time, it was about how he had been living in a state of denial. He had told himself he was too busy to focus on his big projects, but in reality, he had been busy with things that didn't move him forward. It wasn't the lack of time that was the problem, but the lack of intentional use of time. Alex wasn't prioritizing his goals. He was letting distractions and habits that didn't serve him take precedence. As Alex sat with this new awareness, something within him shifted. He felt a deep sense of clarity, but also a sense of urgency. He now understood that the key to unlocking his potential was right in front of him. It was all about making deliberate, intentional choices with how he spent his time. For the first time in a long while, Alex felt empowered. He realized that he had the power to change, to take control of his time, and to start using it in a way that aligned with his long-term goals. This wasn't about perfection. It was about progress, about making small, consistent decisions that would add up to something much greater over time. And it was at that moment, as he sat with his notebook, reflecting on the week, that Alex made a promise to himself. He would stop wasting time. He would focus on the things that truly mattered. He would respect his time the way it deserved to be respected, not as an endless, renewable resource, but as something finite and invaluable. In this expanded version, the realization becomes a pivotal moment of self-awareness for Alex. It's not just about acknowledging that he's wasted time, but about understanding the deeper consequences of those choices. His recognition of the power of intentional time management is what sparks the change in him. He moves from a state of denial to one of empowerment and clarity, fully understanding that the key to unlocking his potential lies in how he uses his time going forward. Let me know if you'd like to expand further on any other point or need more details. Certainly, here's an expanded version of the point, the power of time, in greater detail. The power of time expanded. As the days passed following Alex's realization, he began to see time in a completely new light. Before the challenge, he had taken time for granted, never fully grasping the immense power it held. But now, with the hard truth of how much time he had squandered, Alex's perspective began to shift in a profound way. He started to understand that time wasn't just a simple linear progression of minutes and hours. It was a tool, a currency, and a resource that could either propel him forward or hold him back, depending on how he chose to use it. For the first time in his life, Alex began to see the full weight of what Mr. Edwards had said about respecting time. Every moment was an opportunity to move closer to his goals or to continue in the same cycle of distraction. The real power of time, he realized, wasn't in its abundance, but in its scarcity. Time was finite. There was only so much of it each day, and once it was gone, it could never be reclaimed. This truth, once fully acknowledged, became both a sobering and liberating realization. Alex reflected on all the moments he had wasted, the opportunities that had slipped through his fingers while he had been caught up in trivial distractions. He realized how many mornings he had wasted scrolling through social media for hours, checking his phone first thing in the morning, and falling into a cycle of comparison and mindless entertainment. All those moments, in the grand scheme of his life, had amounted to little more than a series of empty gaps in his pursuit of something meaningful. Now, armed with this newfound awareness, Alex understood that every minute he wasted was a minute he couldn't get back. And yet, there was power in that awareness as well. Time, he realized, could be harnessed. It could be used strategically to shape his future, to build his dreams, and to transform his life. The key was not allowing distractions to rob him of those precious moments anymore. He could no longer afford to let his time slip away like sand through his fingers. One of the most important lessons Alex learned was the concept of intentionality. Before, he had lived his days with no clear direction, allowing himself to be swept along by the currents of whatever happened to capture his attention. But now he understood that time didn't simply happen, it had to be managed. Every day was an opportunity to make decisions that would take him closer to his goals, whether it was spending an hour writing ideas for his business or dedicating time to learning new skills. Each moment was a small but powerful investment in his future. Alex also came to understand that small, seemingly insignificant moments could add up to something enormous over time. He had always believed that success came from grand gestures, big breakthroughs, or major moments of inspiration. But he now saw the truth that success was built from the accumulation of consistent, focused effort over time. It wasn't about waiting for a perfect moment or a burst of motivation. It was about taking small, deliberate actions each day that would, over time, compound into significant results. As Alex began to respect time, he also learned to prioritize it. He knew now that he had to focus on the things that truly mattered. No longer could he afford to waste time on things that didn't align with his goals. He began to set clear priorities: his health, his business ideas, his personal growth. He eliminated distractions and made intentional choices about how he spent his days. Each decision, whether large or small, became an act of valuing his time. He realized that the most successful people in the world didn't have more time than anyone else. What they had was the ability to make time work for them. They knew how to prioritize, how to focus, and how to say no to things that didn't move them forward. This was the key to unlocking his own potential. He didn't need more time. He needed to be better with the time he had. As Alex's mindset shifted, so did he. He began waking up earlier to maximize his day, using his mornings to work on his business plans and read books that would help him grow. He started turning off notifications on his phone to prevent himself from falling into the trap of distraction. His evenings, once filled with mindless scrolling, were now dedicated to self-improvement and reflection. He even set aside specific hours each week for focused learning, watching educational videos, or taking online courses. For the first time, Alex felt a sense of control over his life. Time, once something he felt at the mercy of, was now a tool in his hands, his most valuable tool. He started to realize that he could do more with his time than he had ever thought possible. What he had once seen as endless days, he now viewed as opportunities for growth, action, and progress. The power of time wasn't just in how much he had, it was in how he chose to use it. As weeks passed, Alex saw real results from his new approach. He was making progress on his business ideas, learning new skills faster than he had ever imagined, and feeling more energized than he had in years. The feeling of accomplishment that came from using his time wisely was more fulfilling than any moment of instant gratification he had once sought through distractions. Alex realized that the true power of time wasn't in having it, it was in using it to create the life he wanted. In this expanded version, Alex begins to truly understand the power of time as a finite resource. He learns that time is not just something that passes by, it is something that can be used deliberately and intentionally to shape his future. This realization empowers him to take charge of his days and make conscious choices that align with his long-term goals. The shift from being a passive participant in his life to being an active creator is pivotal in Alex's transformation. Let me know if you'd like to delve deeper into any other aspect or expand further on any point. Certainly. Here's the conclusion to the story. Conclusion. The journey Alex had embarked on, from a life of distraction and wasted time to one of intentionality and focused action, was nothing short of transformative. What started as a simple challenge, a wake-up call from Mr. Edwards, turned into a profound awakening for Alex. Through the hard truths of tracking his time, the painful realization of how much he had squandered, and the empowering understanding of the true power of time, Alex had learned to respect his most valuable resource, his moments. In the weeks that followed, Alex's life took on a new rhythm. His mornings were no longer spent scrolling through social media or mindlessly watching TV. Instead, he dedicated time to his passions. Working on his business ideas, reading books, and learning new skills, his days became intentional, each moment carefully curated to bring him closer to his dreams. Though challenges and distractions still arose, Alex had developed the tools to stay focused and navigate them with purpose. Perhaps the most important lesson Alex learned was that change wasn't about perfection, it was about progress. Each day was an opportunity to make better choices, to invest in himself, and to build a future that aligned with his true desire. He understood now that success wasn't the result of a single moment of inspiration, it was the product of consistent, focused effort over time. The small, everyday actions that seemed insignificant at first had compounded into something far greater than he had ever imagined. As Alex looked toward the future, he knew that the road ahead would require continual effort and discipline. But for the first time, he felt confident in his ability to make the most of his time. No longer would he let distractions rob him of his potential. Time was no longer an enemy, it was his ally, a tool that could help him create the life he had always dreamed of. And so, with a clear sense of purpose and an unwavering commitment to his goals, Alex began to build the life he had always envisioned. One moment at a time. Final reflection, this story serves as a reminder that time is our most precious resource, and how we choose to spend it ultimately shapes the life we create. Whether we are working toward personal goals, professional achievements, or self-improvement, each moment is an opportunity to move closer to the life we desire. The key lies not in waiting for the perfect moment, but in making the most of every moment consciously and intentionally. The power of time lies within our hands if we choose to use it wisely. This conclusion wraps up Alex's journey of self-discovery and growth. It highlights how time, when used wisely and intentionally, can be the greatest asset in achieving one's dreams. Let me know if you'd like any revisions or further details.